All right, so we're diving into this Guardian article, and the title itself. This is a coup. Trump and Musk's purge is cutting more than costs, say experts. A coup in America. That's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah, it definitely grabs your attention, right? And the article really digs into some of the stuff that Trump and Elon Musk are doing, stuff that, well, it's not exactly typical in a democracy.
Yeah, no, not at all. Okay, so let's back up for a sec. We're talking second-term Trump, right? And Elon Musk, on top of being, the richest guy around, is now running this new department.
The Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE.
DOGE, right. Catchy. And wasn't he also, Trump's biggest campaign donor?
Oh, yeah, that connection is definitely important here. And what's kind of wild is that Trump, the guy who ran on saving taxpayer money and all that, one of the first things he does is fire a whole bunch of agency watchdogs.
You mean like the people who are supposed to keep things honest?
Exactly. The inspectors general. Their whole job is to make sure there's no waste or fraud going on.
Now that you mention it, I do remember reading somewhere that those inspectors general, they have a lot of power.
A ton. They can basically investigate anything they want within the government. So, yeah, firing them right off the bat definitely raises some red flags.
For sure. So then we have DOGE with Musk at the helm. What have they been up to?
Well, they've been making moves, like trying to get their hands on all this sensitive data from the Treasury Department. We're talking info on millions of Americans, stuff like Social Security, tax refunds. 19 Democratic state attorneys general, they weren't having it, filed a lawsuit to block them, saying DOGE was way overstepping its bounds.
Sounds like they hit a nerve.
Yeah, a judge in New York actually issued a temporary order to stop DOGE from accessing the Treasury's payment system. It was getting pretty heated.
Wow. So how did Musk and Trump react to that?
Well, Musk being Musk, he went on Twitter, or X, I guess it's called now, called the judge corrupt, said he should be impeached. Yeah, and Trump. He went and publicly questioned the authority of the entire judiciary, suggested that judges who go against him might need to be, and I quote, looked at.
Hold on. That's pretty aggressive. I mean, attacking a judge like that, that's not exactly playing by the rules.
Not at all. Legal experts are saying this kind of talk is dangerous. It could even incite violence against judges. And remember, these are the folks who uphold the rule of law. If you undermine them, you undermine the whole system.
And then there's that case with Paul Martin, the inspector general at USAID. He put out a report warning about the potential damage from DOGE's job cuts at the agency, and then boom, fired.
And then, like clockwork, Musk comes out and calls USAID a criminal organization. USAID, for those who don't know, that's the agency that provides humanitarian aid around the world.
Wow. So basically, you criticize DOGE, you get labeled a criminal.
Pretty much. And former inspectors general, legal experts, they're all saying this creates a chilling effect. Makes people afraid to speak out, to hold power accountable.
So this isn't just about efficiency, it's about silencing dissent.
Right. And another thing, former IGs are pointing out that Musk and DOGE, they haven't actually shown any proof of the billions of dollars of waste they claim to have found. It's all very hush-hush. And that lack of transparency, well, it's not exactly reassuring.
Not at all. And to make matters worse, Trump just signed a new executive order. Gives DOGE even more power.
Now, every federal agency has to work with DOGE on job cuts and hiring freezes.
It's like DOGE is becoming this shadow government, calling all the shots.
Yeah, and, this whole thing has sparked a lot of pushback. 14 state attorneys general, they filed a lawsuit trying to challenge DOGE's authority.
What are they saying?
They're arguing that Trump basically violated the Constitution by creating this whole new agency without any approval from Congress.
So they're saying DOGE is, operating outside the law?
That's their argument, yeah. Like DOGE is this parallel government just bypassing all the normal checks and balances we're used to.
And, we can't ignore the elephant in the room here, right? Campaign finance. Musk dropped almost $300 million into Trump's campaign.
It's a lot of money.
Makes you wonder if this isn't some kind of quid pro quo situation. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
It's a valid question to ask, right? I mean, that level of donation, that buys a lot of influence.
It does.
And it's not crazy to think that maybe DOGE is being used to get rid of agencies and regulations that Musk just doesn't like. The ones that might be inconvenient for his businesses.
Exactly. Like, what if suddenly environmental regulations are just deemed inefficient and get tossed out the window?
Right. And that's what's so worrying about all of this. This isn't just about making the government run better. It's about who gets to decide what better even means, who benefits and who loses out.
Yeah. And it all feels very, secretive. Like we're not getting straight answers. Just these vague statements about waste and efficiency. Hard to know what's really going on behind the scenes.
That lack of transparency, that's one of the most alarming things about this whole situation. I mean, a democracy is supposed to be open, right? People should be able to see what their government's doing, hold them accountable.
Exactly. And when powerful people are operating in the shadows, that's when things can get really messy.
That's when corruption can take root. Public trust erodes. It's a dangerous path to go down.
So where does this leave us? I mean, are we seriously witnessing a coup in slow motion? Is American democracy actually on the line here?
Look, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that our democratic institutions are facing a serious challenge right now. You have attacks on the judiciary, critics being silenced, and this concentration of power in an unelected entity like DOJ.
It's all pretty unsettling.
It is. And the speed at which all of this is happening is really concerning, too. It feels like every week there's a new executive order, a new lawsuit, a new controversy.
It's hard to keep up.
It is. And that makes it harder for people to grasp what's really at stake. It's like they're trying to overwhelm us with information, so we just tune out and let them do whatever they want.
So what can we do? Is there any way to fight back against this, to make sure our government stays accountable to the people?
The first step is awareness. Understanding what's happening, how power is shifting, and who benefits from all of this.
Okay, so we need to pay attention.
Absolutely. Then we can start asking questions, demanding answers from our elected officials, supporting the organizations that are fighting to protect our democratic institutions. Things like a free press, an independent judiciary. Those are the things we have to stand up for.
This deep dive has been pretty eye-opening. When you sent us this article, I have to admit, I didn't really connect all the dots,
Yeah.
but now I'm starting to see how these seemingly separate events, they fit into a much bigger, much more troubling pattern.
And it's important to remember this is just one perspective, the one presented in the Guardian article. There are lots of other voices and viewpoints out there.
Right, this isn't the whole story.
It's not. It's crucial to do your own research, to read from different sources, and to form your own conclusions. Don't just take our word for it or the word of any single article.
We've just scratched the surface here. There's so much more to explore and unpack. I encourage everyone listening to keep digging. Go deeper.
Read the full Guardian article. Check out other sources. Think critically about what you find.
We've given you some starting points, but now it's up to you to connect the dots. Ask yourself, what does all of this mean for the future of America? What kind of country do we want to live in?
And maybe even more importantly, ask yourself, what role do you want to play in shaping that future? Because it's not set in stone. We all have a part to play.
This is the Deep Dive, signing off. It really makes you think, doesn't it? This whole idea of power shifting. And not in the way we're used to.
Yeah, it definitely challenges how we normally think about power in a democracy, right? We tend to think of it as spread out, checks and balances and all that. But this feels different.
Like it's all being pulled into one place.
Exactly. And those lines between public interest and private interest, they're getting really blurry. Hard to tell where one ends and the other begins.
And it's happening so quickly. I mean, it makes you wonder, was this all planned out from the beginning? Or are they just kind of making it up as they go along?
That's a really good question. Is there some master plan here? Or are they just seizing opportunities as they pop up? Either way, the consequences are going to be huge.
Yeah. We've talked about the lawsuits, the firings, the attacks on the judges. But what does this mean for everyday people? How does this power shift actually affect our lives?
That's where things get really interesting. Think about the agencies DOJ is going after, right? Treasury Department, USAID, these are the agencies that provide essential services. Stuff like Social Security checks, humanitarian aid. What happens if they're weakened or dismantled? Who fills that void?
And if those services end up getting privatized, does that mean only people who can afford it will have access? Will we see even bigger gaps between the rich and the poor?
It's a real possibility. And it's not just about access to services either. It's about accountability.
Yeah.
If you have private companies taking over roles that the government used to handle, it becomes way harder to make sure things are transparent, that there's oversight.
Yeah.
Who's watching the watchers, right?
So is there anything we can do? Any way to push back against this power grab? To make sure our government is actually serving the people, not just a select few?
The first thing is we got to be aware. We got to understand what's happening, how power is shifting, and who stands to gain from all of this.
So knowledge is power, right?
Exactly. And once we're informed, we can start asking the tough questions, demanding answers from our elected officials, supporting those organizations that are fighting to protect democratic institutions. A free press, an independent judiciary, That stuff's essential.
This deep dive has honestly been a wake-up call.
Yeah.
When you sent us this article, I'll admit I didn't quite grasp the